trying to connect live. We are live on Facebook also and live on YouTube. I know people will be joining on Facebook as they find out about it, and I'm not going to just, sit here and wait because Facebook I can't turn the beginning off of. So thank you all for being here. It's good to be back. I didn't do this for 2 weeks after I stopped doing it on the radio show, and it was a hard decision because I really like doing radio. I really like the whole format of it and everything, but it was quite a bit, and we just really need to be moving towards things that are just going to bring more people into the institute and the like. But the upside is that I'm really enthusiastic about doing the show. It's beginning to wane a little bit. It was becoming a bit much with all the technology and everything. And the other thing is I don't have to cut it off right at 5. I don't have to be as precise on the timing. I can do it at my leisure. And if somebody has a question near the end, I can actually finish it and give it an in-depth answer before I go, I mean, you say, hey, we got to sign off now, and you hear the music playing and the like. So I'm really glad to be back. So Margarita, she is here. Lisbeth is watching. Claudia is watching. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So good to have you all. Thank you. By all means, type in your questions if you have them. I'm going to just refresh my Facebook on the screen here to make sure I get to see the that I will actually get to see the questions as they happen. And I did something a little different this time, actually different from me altogether, something I very, very rarely do. And that is I actually prepared something that I wanted to share with you. Usually a day or two before I do a show, or something like this, I'll get an idea as to what to expect. Well, what subject I should cover, and then how to actually develop it. I just get some ideas, a title, maybe a couple of ideas. I never write anything down. I never do that for this. I'm a little bit more organized when I give a class. But this time, for some interesting reason, a whole thing came to me, and I sat and I dictated it. It was about 8 or 9 minutes as I was dictating it into the phone, just kind of flowed this thing. And so I actually had a whole bunch of ideas that I wanted to share with you that were, deeply involved and deeply significant for anybody who happens to be on the spiritual path, which is, pretty much everybody who bothers to come to one of my things. Let me move this a little bit. Yeah, okay. And so I called this particular show "The Many Paths to God." And God is not a word that I use very often, although for a while I didn't use it at all, simply because people's ideas about God and the associations we have with God, and the current justification of a lot of cruelty and barbarism going on in the name of God has kind of left a real sour taste in people who are genuinely interested in spiritual truth, and even to the point where people will identify I'm spiritual, but not religious. But I've started using it more lately because I'm free of all of that. I'm free of all of those associations, and I really wanted to kind of pull the pendulum back to the exact center, because with that total rejection of that, what's happened, especially in where spirituality and personal development have merged, and much to my chagrin, in non-dual Advaita teachings, the the emphasis has become extremely intellectual. We can listen to people doing invited teaching, and it's very much of the intellect. And as a result, something very essential has been lost. And in fact, it is really characteristic of what's happening in the entire world. Everything is being ruled by the head. I mean, the mind grabs everything. And if you look at the world, it's being run really by the mind. Everything is mental. Look at it. Very little in the way of heart. It's all, fundamentalism is all just by the book. Our governments are by the book. They say, well, the government shouldn't be paying money to feed the poor because that's not what it's about. That's what it's here for. And it's like, what about the heart? What about just feeling that kind of empathy and compassion that doesn't come from the mind? The mind will just follow rules. It's really part of the sign of the times, I think, with the whole schism that's taken place between the masculine and feminine energies, being completely out of balance that we're experiencing in the world. The mind represents the masculine energy in its highest form. It's wisdom and perception, and the feminine represents the heart, which in its highest form is compassion and power. Right? But now we have taken and idealized the mind. Everything is about the mind. Science and politics, economics, everything's about science. You want to justify something. You want to prove something is true. You hold up the holy book of science. Well, science has said. Now, I have nothing against science. It's incredibly valuable, but it is all of the intellect. There is no room for heart in it. There's no room for feeling because that's too objective. But this emphasis on intellect has turned humans, us, into machines. We're cogs. We're consumers. We're no longer people. And on the other side, the heart, the energy of the heart and compassion and openness, which is actual real power, has become trivialized. It's become reduced to sentimentality and has been rendered powerless. Oh, that's just feelings. You're just feeling that. Emotion has no place there. Hello, Brian. Hello, Pat, my nephew. Good to see you. And so another symptom of this loss, the schism between the heart and the mind, is simply the way women have been treated really since the beginning of civilization. Women as being more associated with that, and it's not a necessity, but being more associated with the energy of the heart. They've been marginalized. They've been disempowered. They've been turned into possessions and second-class citizens in pretty much most of the cultures around the world. Now, I really want to point out that the heart energy has nothing to do with gender. The spiritual essence of heart and true intellect is available equally to both. So any kind of rules or something that wants to isolate it in one place or another, which is another thing, which is why it has hindered men from becoming full and hindered women from being everything they are. This belief that somehow that it belongs to gender. It's only a tendency of going in one way or the other. So what does any of this have to do with the title of the show, which is the many paths to God? Well, we have to ask, what is God? And for those of you who are just joining, I mentioned in the beginning, I don't use that word. I haven't used that word a lot in the past. You didn't use it at all in the past. I kind of abandoned it because of the associations that it has. And everybody has their own meaning. So it was always loaded, right? But I've started to use it, and there's a reason why. When I use the word God, what I'm talking about is something that is indescribable. I don't have a sense of a person, because how could you have an infinite person? I mean, if God is what every one of the scriptures in the world say, he or she or it is infinite and boundaryless. It It means that it or she or he is indescribable. So for me, I see this as this perfect unity, this perfect oneness. And oneness is indescribable. I mean, with oneness, there isn't another thing to be able to describe it. For example, try to describe humanity in its wholeness, just humanity. You can't actually do it until you start speaking of male and female and this kind of characteristic and this ethnic and these cultures and these kinds. You can't do it. You can't just think of it because it's really one. The oneness can only be described in terms of the manyness. So humanity, something like humanity being inexplicable, how much more is something like God, like the ultimate that we aspire to, the ultimate that could possibly be, and be self-aware existence. How could it possibly be described beyond all description, beyond even space and time? So whatever that perfect, indescribable center is, as far as I'm concerned, that's got to be it. That's got to be God, the center, the place where everything is absolutely perfectly what it is and perfectly in balance. You know, in yoga, they recognize 6 different paths. Most people don't know it. Most people only know one. A few know a couple more, and very few know that there are actually 6. Hatha yoga, which is of course the one taught in every gym now, the one that is the one that, you know, every town's got 3 yoga studios now, and there's a million different flavors, right? Everybody knows that one pretty much. But there's also Raja yoga. There's Seva yoga. Raja yoga is training of the mind. Seva yoga is unity through service. Bhakti yoga is devotion. Karma yoga is work without attachment to the results. And finally, Jnana yoga, which is the most unknown of all, which is the pure sublimation of wisdom. It is the ultimate of knowledge. Completely unknown, different paths to what? To union. Yoga is simply the Sanskrit word for union, to become one. But then you'd have to ask, union with what? It's normally thought of on a religious path or a spiritual path as a union or reuniting with God, an atonement of your sins in one instant, or a reuniting in some way, depending on who it is, God, Brahma, Allah, Jehovah, could be Jesus, the prophet, Krishna. There's 1,000 different options of who everyone wants to become one with, and of course they think theirs is the right one. But let's just look at the sense of union. Union means to make one. Now we think of this as becoming one with God, right? Suddenly we're going to merge into and become one with her. We're really close. I mean, really intimate. You know, we're like this. You know, two peas in a pod. Like the best, the most intimate of the intimate. Like the best, closest relationship you could possibly happen. All of that's really nice and a really good idea, and I hope people can enjoy those kinds of intimate relationships. But that's not the union to which the word yoga or union is actually referring. That's not its meaning. Think of it more like a river. When the Amazon or the Nile flows into, in the Nile's case, Mediterranean Sea, or the Amazon's case, into the Atlantic Ocean, do they remain the river? And they both travel more than 4,000 miles, and of course things out of them, various mountain ranges, until they finally merge, like in the Amazon's case, in the Atlantic Ocean. What happens to it once it hits the ocean? Can you go out in the ocean like in a helicopter and say, "Oh, there it is. There's the mountain. There's the Amazon. It's over there." And you can watch it snake its way through. When it hits the ocean, it is the ocean. I mean, think about that. It's no longer the Nile River, the Amazon, or the Mississippi, for that matter. It's gone. It ceases to exist. I mean, now, it didn't go anywhere. Everything that we thought of as the river, the appearance of this water as it's flowing down on its way, which we named in the mind, we gave it the name, the Amazon, the Nile, the Mississippi. That really wasn't it. It was just the water coming out of the mountains as it moved inevitably, and I might say even enthusiastically, towards the ocean. I mean, it literally moved vigorously and determinedly to its own dissolution, its own end. It actually moved inevitably to its own non-existence, where it would be absolutely no more. It simply ceased to exist. There was no more Nile. There was only the ocean. It's like a drop of water falling from the sky. I mean, you like go out and search it out, find, oh, there's my drop, take it in a cup and bring it back home. And a lot of the water from the river ended up in the sky. I mean, we don't look up in the sky and go, oh, there's the Nile, there's the Potomac, right? We don't do that. I mean, it is the ocean. So this kind of union is not, I'm going to get really close. It means you're going to disappear. This is the kind of union I talk about when I'm talking about the union with God. And this is completely outside the realm of the mind, because the mind is completely committed to that sense of being somebody, being egoic. I'm going to merge. I'm going to get really close. I'm going to be really good. I'm going to be really spiritual, really religious. But I'm still there. And so it can't come up and won't come up with any process or meditation or spiritual practice in which it's going to disappear. It's going to get really good and really close. I'm just far from enlightenment. But, I'm still working on stuff, because there's still got to be some when there. Because we imagine that somehow as we think of ourselves, the image we hold of ourselves is going to experience this awakening or union or enlightenment or whatever you want to call it. And that we're really going to like it. It's going to be like the best of the best. It's going to be like ayahuasca times 10. It's going to be the most great things. Enlightenment turns, or the mind turns enlightenment into an object, the way we turn the water into a river until it disappears in front of it. It turns it into another object to pursue and make up processes about. Muji likes to say, the one who starts the inquiry, the non-dual inquiry, or the path to God, disappears in the inquiry. Atmananda said to one of his students, enlightenment is great. Too bad you're not there to enjoy it. You see, to the ego, that sense of being a separate self, that sense of me, and I got my autonomy, and I like my little privacy, and I like my little world. This is the scariest thing in the entire world, and that is where all the resistance to genuine spiritual inquiry comes from. That sense of the ego, which is nothing other than your self-image masquerading as if it was something real rather than just an image in your mind. It's so invested in being the Amazon or the Nile or the Mississippi that it sees the ocean. It actually sees union as a threat. It'll work towards it. It'll become very spiritual and, have all the right clothes and say all the right things. But it actually, if the door finally opens, all right, come on into union. You go, I'll be right back. I got just a couple things. Just a couple things I got to clean up. It's a movie I haven't seen. I'll be right back. That's the way it is, because it doesn't want to lose itself. It would love to be one that is close, have all the power and influence, experience heaven. What's an experience heaven without God? Everybody wants to go to heaven. Nobody wants to die. It'll pray to God. It'll ask for help. It'll be devotional, all sorts of things. But really one with it? I mean, is this unity where everything you know about yourself disappears in this oneness? Is that really a threat? Is it a threat to the Nile to become freed from those narrow boundaries that are squeezing it and forcing it into a certain direction? Sometimes squeezed so tightly, it's barely a trickle going down. Other times it's just wide and fat. Sometimes it's moving so fast you can't get your breath, and sometimes it's going on so slowly. Oh God, is this ever going to end? I mean, who really wants to hold on to that? And eventually, I'll throw all that in this just this vastness, borderless. The whole earth now is yours. The land even appears in you. And most of the earth is you. And the continents become islands. You're no longer contained in this narrow thing dictating your path. You are the ocean. Why do we fight it? Why do we cling to being a mere river or a creek when the whole world is awaiting? We'll even cling until eventually the clinging and the constriction and the smallness just gets so overwhelming, so much misery and suffering, that we really start for real, not just in appearance, but for real, that walk, that path towards the ultimate union with God. And we say, I would do anything for that union. I want to point out another little tidbit about that, because lots of people say that. Lots of people say, I've given my life to God. I've surrendered everything. Right? I'm just absolutely adamant in my search for truth. I'll let go of anything. I'll do whatever I need to do. They're willing to give all of their stuff completely and let it go. But if God, he or she or it, is vast and infinite, they already have your stuff. It's already got your stuff. It doesn't need your stuff. What could he possibly care about? Anything you go, take my car. I mean, who cares, right? Doesn't need it. Infinite, ever present, all powerful. What in the world could he possibly need? What could she possibly want? It's God, for crying out loud. What is it you have of value that you could possibly give except you? Ultimately, the genuine spiritual path becomes no longer the point where I'm surrender, I'm seeking you, or I'm willing to give to you. It means it becomes the most beautiful prayer of a monk, actually a mystic monk from the 16th century, I believe. God, replace me with you. Remove everything of me and leave nothing but you. You're the beating of my heart. You're the air in my lungs. You're the life in this body, and you're the body. You're every step, every movement, every flower, every ant, every animal, every warm and cold breeze, every sunbeam, every star. It's all you, and no me. Let there be no more me, and there be only you. That's union. That's the real spirit and essence of non-dual inquiry. The thing that gets missed in most of the modern teachers you have, your Advaita. And of course, the Advaita is completely missed by most of the religious teachers, which focus on obedience to God and laws and that stuff. The path is that perfect middle way. which is a deep and piercing inquiry, and at the same time, this most huge openness. To close off this little tome, I want to finish it with a poem, one of my very favorite poems. It's very short. It's only four lines. And it's from a 12th century Chinese mystic named Lin Po. It goes like this. The bird disappears into the sky. The cloud dissolves and drains. We sit together, the mountain and I, until only the mountain remains. All right. Now that I have that off my chest, I want to just open it up now for questions. I'm going to check Facebook really quick here to see if anything has shown up. A lot of people have joined. Salona, hello. We got Karina, we got Brett. I saw a couple of people flash by and that I couldn't acknowledge at the time that I actually went to high school with, which is welcome to you all. And for some reason, it's not showing up on Facebook. I know you're still here, but I can't get it on the screen to see. So anyway, okay, I'm going to pick up some questions here, if maybe they're relevant or not after I've said that. But let's do this. Hi, this is from Ellen. Hi, thank you for your videos. Is mindfulness and awareness of physical sensations important? When I connect with that, I become in the moment and forget my thoughts. Yeah. Mindfulness is a brilliant practice. It's a very rarefied form of meditation in which you really are attempting to be present with what you're experiencing without laying on top of it interpretation and story and all of the ideas that we normally have associated. Most of the time, we're not really in our lives. We're not experiencing our lives. We're experiencing our thoughts about our lives. The experience immediately triggers a cascade of thoughts and associations. And before we know it, we're completely embroiled in our beliefs about and our interpretations of the experience. Those interpretations are really patently untrue. There are representations. The mind can only represent what is. It doesn't create what is. The experience itself is direct, and mindfulness is a beautiful practice to bring you to the point where you're actually experiencing things as they are. And you could do it anywhere. You know, when you're, someone saying, a Zen master would say, when you're driving, just drive. When you're eating, just eat. It is, you know, just be aware of the food going, what it feels like, the texture, the taste, the smell, all of it. Just sit with it for a minute. I watch people all the time just scarfing food into their mouth. They're not there at all. Like fourth or fifth bite, you know, they don't even taste it anymore. And of course, we live in the age where everything that you experience now, out comes the camera, and you see the entire camera through this little, you know, 5-6 inch screen, right? And sometimes everything just becomes, you know, an opportunity for the selfie, which means you're not there. I mean, I see it all the time. People sitting around with their families at dinner, and the kids got iPads, and the parents are on their phone. And there's something really unusual, if something neat happens, or somebody important comes to town, and people are all there with their cameras. My son told me the other day he was at a concert, and the guy next to him had his camera out the entire time, recording the concert. He was watching the concert through the camera. I'm watch it at home, right? And Chris said, hey, by the way, here's my email. Can you send it to me when you're done? And he watched it. I mean, directly. Taught the boy right. But so mindfulness is a cure for that. I will oftentimes refer to the yoga of allowing, my body awareness, my various kinds of of self-awareness, what I used to call just allow it, which is now part of inner reconciliations. Inner reconciliation is it focuses on that, and it's the first step to genuine awakening, to genuine spirituality, because you're actually starting to be present with what's there. Now, the reason we don't want to be, the reason we pull away, is because a lot of times what we're experiencing isn't very pleasant to us. We have a lot of pain, we have a lot of trauma, we have a lot of wounds, we have a lot of stuff from the past. And so a lot of it can be very painful to be with. And so we want to run away from it. And that becomes so habitual that we run away from our joy too. We run away from fun. We run away from intimacy. We put this buffer of mind in between us and the direct experience of life. Physical sensations, as you mentioned there, are key. And the way I reconnect people to actually their real experience is through the body, just beginning to feel your own feelings. And when you do that, a most remarkable things happen. I've astounded people who have tried to meditate for years and failed, that I had them in that state of a quiet mind within minutes. Simply because if you put your attention on your body, which is direct and present and always in the now, your body never is wondering about the past and future. That's all the mind. Whereas the mind is never in the now. It's always memory and anticipation. I mean, that's all it is. It's description, comparison, association, memory, and anticipation. That's what the mind is. That's the whole function of it. So when you are really focused on something that is absolutely present here and now, the mind just kind of goes quiet. It's not getting the energy. And that feeling is what people call the quiet mind, right? Or a thoughtless state, which is, sought in meditation, but very rarely found, because people try to do it by forcing the mind to be quiet, which is like, as Mooji put it, trying to force the mind to be quiet is like trying to stop the wind dressed as a kite. I mean, you're just not going to do it, right? So in that moment, you literally forget the thoughts, the energy of thoughts, which were constantly grabbing your attention, which is what fed them. That attention just doesn't get grabbed and it keeps coming back here. It just loses the energy. And you'll find yourself in this very quiet place. And the beauty of that quiet place is not just the quietness, which is totally cool all in itself. It is also the place for which we can powerfully resolve the traumas and wounds and all the stuff that's within us, because now we are present. And in that presence, there is the power. Eckhart totally talks about it all the time. Presence is the healer. Presence is what makes things happen. It is the presence. It doesn't matter what kind of modality, psychological or body work or energetic or remote, it doesn't matter what the modality is. If you as the practitioner are present, it's going to work, because it's drawing the power from that. So long-winded answer, but hey, I have time today. I don't have to cut myself off at 5 to 5. So I hope that answers you, Alan. If not, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Thanks again, Judy, for your asking about my eye surgery. Yeah, I had cataracts. I had one removed. I have to have the other removed this week. And but now I can actually see. They replace it with these, lenses, basically, permanent contact lenses. So anyway, this is from Shamsa Al-S. Do you believe our lives are written? Sometimes I feel I don't have much free will, as they also say everything happens for a reason. Please explain that. You guys ask some questions that are so subtle and so vast that I just have to stop for a second and go, where am I going to start with this? Are our lives predestined? Yes. And unfortunately, like every spiritual teacher, I'm going to say yes and no. To the degree that we are simply going with the programmed responses and energy of the mind, the way we have been programmed to behave and live and believe and think, without ever questioning it at its root. I mean, it really at its root, not just my tribe belief, not just changing of beliefs, but actually diving into the nature of belief itself and why we believe anything and how does something become true to us. If we don't do that, then yes, your life is going to be pretty predictable because the patterns are there and it will follow the pattern. I mean, if you extend that across multiple lives, you have what's called karma. It really is simply unchallenged energetic assumptions that are just persisting. So in certain circumstances, you'll react in a certain way. And everybody experiences that. Even the greatest sages in the world experience that. They're just wise to it. And so they are not out of control anymore when the nervous system reacts, because we've all been programmed. If you weren't programmed, you don't survive. As simple as that. So is it predestined by some external force, like a God that says your life is going to go like this? You know, I'm going to look in the Akashic records and see what's going to happen. I would say absolutely not. It isn't. There's a set of causes and conditions that take place, that this particular body mind gets put into a particular pattern. And if nothing disturbs that pattern, it'll stay in it. Simple as that. It's just like anything else, you know, push a car down a hill, it's going to keep going unless something moves it, something pushes it off to the side. So they say everything happens for a reason. Well, it does. And the reason is either programmed response or consciousness is waking up to itself. Because if I become aware of the programmed responses, I become its master. Now, in the beginning, when that first begins to happen, some space opens up. And we are no longer immediately, the event happens in the environment and immediately we're triggered, no choice, nothing, right? Even most of our choices are actually programmed responses, which we think are choices, and they're not. Most of our likes and interest and desires and stuff we do isn't really a choice. It is simply the programmed responses. So the consciousness needs to emerge there first. And going back to the previous question about mindfulness, the point of mindfulness and my teaching of allowing is that you get to this place where you are allowing yourself to feel the impulse, to see the environmental trigger, feel the impulse of the energy system wanting to be triggered, wanting to go off in the programmed pattern, but you don't go in the program pattern, you just stay there. Or even if the pattern happens and you can't do anything about it, you're now aware of it. You're not in it. You're not so identified with it that I am that and I really need to change it. Suddenly there's space. You're seeing it. And if that happens long enough, and if you're patient with it and really gentle with yourself, that gap begins to get wider and wider and wider. And in that gap is where we finally have some choice. I'm no longer the robot just doing what I was programmed to do. I am in fact, now I am really a free moral agent. I really am at the point where I can begin to see things as they are. I can see through my own bullshit, basically. I can see through my programming, and I can see all this stuff I believe. I can see through my own lies, the ones I've been telling myself and telling others, and I can really begin to approach truth. The real inner truth. Now, there is a level beyond that develops even further, where the whole question of free will comes up again. And it's actually a big question in science right now, because they've studied it, and all of it, they actually initially discovered it back when biofeedback machines had been invented. But now with MRIs, it's gotten so sophisticated, they've been able to confirm that everything you do, the cognition, the recognition in the neocortex that you did something happens a split second later. And at that same time, the sense that I did it appears. They have shown conclusively that action happens and then the idea of a decision being made happens. And they've analyzed it every which way since Sunday to make sure that it wasn't, some other subtle thing that was causing it. There's no evidence for choice anywhere within the human body. And that doesn't mean it doesn't exist just because they haven't found anything like that. I don't want to put it like that, but I think we really have to be willing to approach a very different way of looking at things, because if you approach that just without going into it very deeply, it'll appear as that it just, well, then there's no choice. We are really robots. And there's a lot of behaviorists and certain groups of scientists who believe that it is. But everybody knows that there's more to us than robotics. We can feel it. It's intuitive. We can explain it. Science can't explain it. But there's an intuitive sense that there's more to us. So I know it's a long-winded answer, and I know that it isn't a yes or no. Where you start with is the willingness to be present with your own feelings. When you can really be present with your feelings, even when they're uncomfortable, they begin to show you. The feelings themselves will begin to reveal where they came from, what they're about, and what effect they're having. And you'll begin to see directly the programming that you've been living out, which does have no choice. And in seeing that, with the space beginning to open up, so does choice. And with that, choice becomes a much bigger world, a world without programmed responses, where even the nature of choice itself and the nature of your own existence can now be looked at without the filter, the foggy lens of conditioning sitting on top of it. So I do hope that answers you, Shamsa. I hope I'm saying that right. Shamsa al something or other. So let me do a quick look over here on Facebook. Oh, it's so nice to, it's actually nice to not be having to do the radio. Because now I don't have to be, so I have to fill every single second and don't say and don't talk about it. It's like, because you can see me, so I'm like trying to do stuff to manage all this. So thanks to Amy and Angwin Angwin, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Elizabeth Salona, well, hello again, Salon. For Nicole, Nicole, lovely, wonderful. But I don't see any questions over here on the Facebook side. So I tend to get all my questions on the YouTube side for whatever reason. Okay, so from Buddha's brain, which I really, I love that that screen name you have. Oop, Roland Johnson, Sarah, got several people I went to high school with showing up. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for checking out what your the trouble your classmate is getting into. Alan said, sorry if I missed your answer, my phone died. Oh dear, it's happened to me too. And fortunately, I have it plugged in to the wall this time, so it's not going to, so Facebook won't get cut off. It has in the past. So it's the first question I took, Alan. So you can get back on the replay. Back to Buddha's brain, which is great. Thank you, G. Beautiful intro. Question: when one becomes the ocean, what determines the forward movement of life? What decides what next? What's next? What happens to goals, dreams, etc., etc.? Well, when the Nile becomes the ocean, do the fish in the ocean suddenly just disappear or change? Do they start acting differently? Do the people on the beach suddenly change their clothes or disappear? You see, the thing is, when we have that personal sense that like I'm somebody independent from everybody else, we see everything in terms of as if it's a personal possession. This is my dream, right? This is my goal. This is my house. This is my stuff. It all becomes wrapped up in this sense of being my. But if that all vanishes into the ocean, right? The river wants to say, well, all my dreams and all my goals and all my stuff is going to disappear with it. Well, the truth of the matter is, because the only thing you've been clinging to is the illusion of the river. You've always just been the water heading to the ocean. The image you hold of yourself, which thinks it owns the goals and dreams, the ego believes that it's my goals, my dreams, but it isn't. And when that ego dissolves into the ocean, you find out that they are the goals of life itself. They are the dreams of life itself. I mean, everybody likes sex, right? I'm sure if anybody really hates it, let me know. But is it personal? Is it a personal possession? Like you're the only one and you had to acquire it somewhere? You bought it in some store? It's the desire of life. Your hair grows. It's not, you don't, it does. It's the nature of life itself. But for some reason, we think that because I like, raspberry ice cream instead of, coconut cream, that somehow that's my preference. Who said? Well, it just happens to be the preference. It just happens to be what's happening in this body mind at this particular time. It's life itself. So what happens is you find that all of those goals and desires never belong to this little person. They always belong to life. They've always belonged to the ocean. And now they're liberated. A lot of people get this idea, and I hear it all the time. And well, I'm not going to have any. What am I going to do? Sit around and do nothing? I'm going to just wake up and then sit there and do nothing? No, of course not. Of course not. That's only because you think that everything that you're doing has been caused by you, that you're the big doer of everything. That's the illusion. You're not. Life is moving life. Life is choosing, as it were. Life has its forward momentum. Does life stop because the river enters into the ocean? Has life ever stopped? Have I ever been able to stop it? Have you ever been able to stop it? Have you ever been able to get up in the morning and, click it, turn it off, like there's a snooze button on life? This is the mistake. And it's very subtle. But the ego takes claim, tries to take ownership of that which it doesn't have. Like when I started this thing by saying, giving it back to God, give what? It was never yours in the first place. You're not giving anything up, right? That sense of I'm the doer. So I mentioned a little bit just a few moments ago with Shamsa's question. Even the neurology of it is indicated that the sense of I did it happens after the action already occurred. So it would look something, if I did it in slow motion, it would look like this. I'm going to raise my hand now. That's actually what happens. So what is really happening? What is real freedom? What does it mean to become one with the ocean? Except to become one with that life that is the one raising a hand, not the ego, which is getting it secondhand and going, yeah, I did that. That's pretty cool. You're right. Thank you. It was really a good job. I mean, that's what it is. It's this silly little thing taking credit after the fact when it's already happened. I'm trying to explain it as directly as I possibly can, and the only reason it's difficult is because we aren't used to thinking like that. We're always used to thinking of everything from the point of view of this little person. That's just an image we have in our mind. It's not even you. It never was you. It couldn't possibly be you. You're the ocean, and your oceanness, and the water of the ocean evaporates and becomes the clouds in the sky, and it travels all over the world, and it rains down, and it makes snow on the mountains, and it comes back through what we call the river, and guess where it goes back to? Hello. It's all this incredibly beautiful, huge cycle of life, of which we are privileged and honored to be the witness of it. Sink into that witnessing power. Really find out who's really witnessing all of this. That's where the gold is. All of the meditation, all the practice, all the spiritual stuff, all of the seeking of union is all to get to that point where, without a small sense of you in the picture, who is actually witnessing all this? Who am I really? If I'm not that, what am I? That's the spiritual path. That's the real path to God. And then we discover God as being way more than what we ever thought he, she, or it was. That's when it really hits into what even Ramana Maharshi called the greatest spiritual writing of all time, which was Moses, when he said, when he asked God what was his name, and God said, I am that I am. That sense of I am that is constantly being experienced, that makes everything possible. Without you simply would not exist. That I am is the God. Now, find out if there's anything other than that, if you are somehow separate from that. And if you are not really one with that. And isn't it, and if that is the I am of everything, the I am, the sense of being in every living creature, every non-animate or inanimate, well, that then is the ocean to which we can willingly let ourselves dissolve into and let go of the idea that you're the river. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. Wow, I love these guys. Such great questions. Thank you. You make my life so happy. When I am present, Papino 11, when I am present, I lose too much motivation. No, what you're losing is the sense of control over your life. And for the ego, it can feel demotivating, because if you take the ego out of the picture, all of the egoic motivations are out of the picture, right? Everything you're doing now isn't just to make myself into something. I'm going to be better or more spiritual or more developed or more wealthy or more handsome, if that's even possible. All of those motivations go away because they were all serving what wasn't you. And in the beginning, when that happens, it can be a little bit shocked. Remember Eckhart Tolle, if people read The Power of Now, when that happened to him, he sat on a park bench and did nothing for 2 years. I mean, he wasn't zombieing out. He was just, the transformation was taking place. The realization that he was the ocean and not the river was penetrating the entire body. It was demotivating and dissolving the ego. And a very different one emerged, until finally at the other end of that, he started talking with people and consulting with people, and eventually wrote the book, The Power of Now. That's his story. That's right. But at first it was just like Ramana Maharshi left home at 17 and sat in a cave for 2 years. He just disappeared from the world. They found him in the cave. He was just completely, I mean, for I think another 5 or 6 years, he didn't talk until little by little, stuff began to happen. I mean, the transition is so powerful and so significant. What I'm inviting you into, and yes, as presence. It may at first feel a little bit demotivated, but notice life isn't going to stop. The things that you have to do. If you feed yourself, you go to the bathroom, people may show up, may have a job to go to, you do stuff, I mean, life happens. But what's happening is life happening is becoming now the ocean happening, and not you, not this egoic thing. I'm doing this. Life is doing it. And that's where the freedom is. Wow. Let's see. What would be the fastest way to change our subconscious programming? That's all, folks. Another great name. Okay. The fastest way to do it, and there'll be people who disagree with me, but I'm a spiritual teacher. My focus is on spirituality. My focus is on a permanent shift out of who you thought you were into who you really are. Right. Now, there's all sorts of different ways to do it. There's all sorts of forms of energy healing, NLP, hypnotherapy. They all work at changing the subconscious programming, and they can eliminate it. None of those will tell you who you are. There's an assumption about who you are. Now, I'm not demeaning them at all. Matter of fact, EFT, I teach as part of the curriculum at MasterHEART Institute and as part of Inner Reconciliation, because it's a very, very powerful physical tool for engaging the body in the process of self-discovery. But that's how I've turned it to be. I've turned it into a spiritual practice rather than a purely therapeutic one, right? So the fastest way to do it, is to become conscious of it. And to become conscious of it means you have to drop your ambition to get rid of the subconscious programming, because you'll never be able to do it. It's the little part up here that's conscious, which is not even one part, it's scattered too, but that's another story, is no match, no match for the rest, for what's going on here. The rest of the brain, the limbic brain and the reptilian stem, 500 million years old, 250 million years old for the limbic brain. The neocortex, about 100,000. So forget it. You don't have a chance, right? It's, you're the 100-pound weakling in the boxing ring with Muhammad Ali. Forget it. Give it up, right? So what can you do? What's your power? What's your superpower? Consciousness is your superpower. They call it subconscious, unconscious. It's because it is not a conscious entity. I don't like the term unconscious mind because it tends to make it seem like it is a mind, like it's a thing. There's an entity there. It's plotting against you. It's not an entity any more than this computer I'm talking on is an entity. It's just a bunch of programmed response. There's nobody there. So that is what you're, so you are consciousness. I know you're conscious. You're hearing my words, right? There's a consciousness there. We don't know what that is. We don't know. Maybe it's made out of matter. Maybe it's not. Forget all of that stuff and just go right to there. What are you conscious of? And I always just bring people's attention to the body. Start with the body. What am I feeling? And drop the intention of changing the subconscious mind so I can get something. That's the whole basis of all of the self-help and personal development things, is that my objective, which is totally the ego, I'm going to get it now because I'm going to change my subconscious programming, and now I'm going to get the thing that I want. Never, ever questioning the validity or the origin of the desire of the thing you want in the first place. Spirituality does that. Now, that doesn't dismiss the rest. That's why I use EFT. And I recommend NLP and EMDR and some other stuff. They work. Hypnotherapy, they work. Right? But they're not the spiritual answer, right? So sometimes some people will come to me, they're in so much pain. I don't bother trying to give them spiritual stuff. I don't try to take them. Let's tap together, meditate together. I bring them to a place where there's relief from the symptoms. That's just humane. That's just what you do. You alleviate suffering. And then maybe there's an interest that can go further with it. So the fastest way to do it is to bring consciousness to where there isn't consciousness. You are consciousness, so you got the leg up there. The most powerful thing is consciousness. It is the most powerful thing. Consciousness, when it's stuck in a belief of thinking of it as self as this little person, it becomes impotent. But consciousness, liberated from that person, becomes presence. It becomes the power with which you can be with anything going on inside. And what happens when you drop the agenda and you turn within to whatever it is you're feeling, what happens is you create the ultimate safe environment. All of the subconscious patterns, unconscious patterns, all of the traumas, the programmed response, all conditioning was created by the nervous system responding to an environment that was not safe. An environment that did not give it permission to be itself in some way or another. Some extremely unsafe, like extreme forms of abuse, and others, but everybody was diminished somewhat by the tribe, because your freedom had to be curtailed in the name of safety. So everybody has that. So everybody's got this stuff going on. What happens if you go to that same place with no agenda? If you have an agenda, it's going to detect the same circumstances that put it in that position in the first place. Something wrong, I got to fix you. You're broken. I'm going to fix you. You're not right. This is what happened to us. But if no agenda, you just show up, you know, like the best person in a relationship where you're really going to be a good listener, and you put your agenda to the side and you just become present with whatever's going on inside you. You have created the most powerful healing environment there is. That's the fast track. Papin, I'm sorry, Papinu, 11. It's a beautiful, beautiful name. I just don't know how to say it. Isn't it great that I talk to people from all over the world, all sorts of different cultures? Also, it's just mind blowing. The internet to me is humanity's beginning to build a unified nervous system to reflect the fact that we really are all one. Anyway, the more present, the less motivated. I get so mellow. I just don't want to ruin the nice present buzz. Okay, good. Drop your attachment to the buzz. It too is appearing in you and with you. You're you. There's total chaos going on around here, or if there's just bzzz, total you're still you. Neither one of those defines you, because both of those are experiences that you have. You are that indescribable. So don't worry about it. So the buzz is there 1 minute, isn't it? So many people get knocked off the spiritual path because I just can't find it. I saw God and now I wait a minute. No. You're just believing your mind. You're believing that the experience of the ultimate reality of your being is some kind of emotional high. It's not. It's the truth of being that is utterly still, featureless through all eternity. It's that which is all the time. And it just takes a moment to turn back within and find that, oh yeah, I was experiencing a peak experience. I was having a horrible time. I was totally blissed out. I was higher than a kite. It was all the same I. That I was present in all of them. And what was that I? It was simply the one who was aware of it happening. I hope this is sinking. It's okay. It takes a while because this is such a different way of looking at things. We've been so indoctrinated into looking at things through the eyes of this little person. We take this off and suddenly I'm looking at the world from the perspective of the ocean. I'm going, wait, the world's all me. Yeah, there's these little islands, they call them continents, but they're nothing compared to me. I contain the whole thing. That's the view from just consciousness. And remember, consciousness isn't personal. The I am is God. It's not personal. It's not your I am. It's not your consciousness. You are consciousness. And guess what? The consciousness that you are is the same one that I am. I mean, the space you're occupying, if you're in Afghanistan or in San Francisco or in India or in England, is that space any different than the space here in New York? Really, take the objects out. Is it different space? Can you cut space? Consciousness is like that. Consciousness is everywhere the same. Same in Afghanistan and San Francisco and London and India. It's all the same. We really are one. That ain't just a nice, cute little spiritual phrase. We are actually one. But that one can never be realized as long as we think we're this little one, because this little one is always going to be separate from that one. And therefore, unity is going to be this attempt to push us together. And of course, you don't fit very well. It's all your fault. So I'm going to have to get rid of you or change you or fix you so that you're more like me and we'll fit together. You see where that goes. It's endless. It becomes the endless egotistical search for power. Look around. That's what our world is suffering from. That's the insanity that our world is living with. Wow. 5:04. Isn't that great? I went by. I didn't even have to pay attention. I went by the time. I love this. Anyway, Ellen, great answer. Thank you. You're very, 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 very welcome. Let's see. Oh, wow, a lot more questions. I can't go everywhere. Oh, well, let's see. Gabriel. Oh, wow. Hello, Gabriel. So good to see you. Wow, I used to be a dynamo, said Papa. I'll get you in just a second. I'm trying to keep it up. God is impersonal. Don't say that. God is beyond personal and impersonal. You say it's impersonal. It's like life is impersonal. I experience life very personally. Don't put it in those terms. Don't be so. I mean, it's both personal and impersonal. It's both universal and particular. The example I like to use is music. If you say music is impersonal, yeah, we can talk about music, right? Trying to talk about music or describe music or say anything about music without humming a tune. You cannot separate the personal and the impersonal. The problem is we've tried to make God personal, right? And then in Vaidya Vedanta, the way they teach it most of the time, they try to make it impersonal, so impersonal that there is no person, get rid of the person. It's not true. The person isn't separate. The person is an appearance of the one. And so everyone is that one, and we're only thinking of ourselves as separate. So this is why it is an indivisible middle way that can't be described, because it is both and neither. And beyond both. That's the way to begin to try to approach it, but approach it with your heart, because your mind's just going to be blah, 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 the whole time, because there's no place for the mind to rest in here, because there's no reference point. This is this and that's that. God is the one, and there's no second, so there's no describing it. There's nothing in no terms in which you can. Talking about that motivation, this has been happening to me for years. How do you overcome this lack of motivation? Dive deeper into the actual feeling. As I said before, let go of your attachment to the peak experience, to the buzz. Just get into life and do it. And then notice what happens when you do. Notice the reactions. Live life. Let life be the koan. Let life be your meditation, not a separation from life. Everything is coming. Separate from while, meditate, get into that space, and then go out and get into life. Do stuff. Be the dynamo, as you said in the next thing. Be it, right? Explore that, though, but not trying to accomplish, not trying to be the dynamo. Explore this now as part of your inner exploration. Notice that things don't have the same meaning for you. So you be there, you do them, but what's going to happen inevitably is things that do have more meaning are going to unfold, that match the new level of consciousness that you're coming to. Gabriel, back to you. Hi, buddy, Gabriel. God, I miss you. Anyway, question. I've been getting an increasing sense of I need to protect myself at the base of my spine. Can you talk about what this energy is and what it might transmute into? Well, the base of the spine, of course, is where we feel the root chakra. It's supposed to be the center of it. I actually feel it through the body. And if you've ever been exposed to my teachings on the chakras, what I say is the first chakra is your body. It isn't in your body. It is your body. It is the energy signature. It is the energy of vibration at that level. It's the same energy, the same light as the light at the crown, the great divinity. Same energy, different frequency, right? Red light as opposed to the violet light. So then to become sensitive to the feeling I need to protect myself is so powerful, because that is the driving force of the first chakra, which I call the tribe. That is the driving force of the energy that holds these particles together to make temporarily a form. And it wants to hold those together. And it is the essence of everything. Because if that wasn't there, first off, we'd be dead. But secondly, there'd be no inner conflict, right? You just do what you want, expression, freedom, everything would be exactly the way you want it. No problem, no big deal. You just be doing it. But the fact of the matter is, when you're young, you express yourself naturally, pure innocence, wham, it runs into the reaction of the tribe, which is, no, can't do that. You're not supposed to be that way. That's not good. You shouldn't even think that. You shouldn't touch yourself there. Don't do those kinds of things. Don't say those kinds of things. We're not like that. We don't act like that. And suddenly, whoop, you're in this little world. But that world that you're now in has been created by your energy system, your nervous system, reacting to the environment when the environment became threatening. And what was the mission? Be safe. Because it's so important, it basically pushes every other motivation out the window, puts them in the back burner, sends them to the basement, right? Freedom, happy life, wealth, prosperity, any of that, not important. If anything that's involved in that will threaten the safety. And of course, what threatens the safety is only the perception we have when we're children bumping into the tribe we happen to be in. There's nothing set about it, right? So becoming aware, one of the most fundamental questions I do in inner reconciliation, when we finally get someone to the point where they're allowing themselves to have feelings, I'll take them to an exercise, I call it intentional triggering, where you picture something like you really want or something that's very important to you. And then you literally invite the energy to object to it. Let yourself feel the resistance. Again, no agenda to get rid of it. You just feel that resistance. And as that becomes comfortable, the next thing is you ask the resistance, what are you protecting me from? And this is where the magic starts happening, because it starts to answer. You start getting images, pictures, feelings. The energy starts to move. Or in the word you use, it begins to transmute itself, because this energy that's been held in place by the sense of the environment being threatened has finally been put into an environment that isn't trying to change it, isn't trying to fix it, isn't trying to turn it into something else, is actually with it, regarding it compassionately and providing it a safe space. Boom, the environment's different. The same energy that's contracted can now go, hey, something's different. And it can begin to expand a little bit. And if it gets a question then, why are you in this position? It's going to answer. Because it sees a way out. It doesn't want to be there. Your energy doesn't want to shut you down. It wants freedom, right? It just knows that in order for it to sustain freedom over a long period of time, it's got to be safe. And now the transmutation will take place. What's it going to transmute into? Who knows? That's the beauty of it. That's the magic and mystery of life. The caterpillar has no idea what a butterfly is. No clue. Ask the caterpillar what its dream is. Ask the caterpillar to do a vision board. And what's it going to be? Miles and miles of green leaves, no predators in sight, right? So all the leaves so close together that it never even has to stretch over any, possibly fall, right? They're also good just wandering endlessly. Well, that's not its destiny. And it couldn't even conceive of. There'd be nothing on that vision board that would talk about traveling thousands of miles a year, being one of the most beautiful creatures on the planet, and flying. Nothing could possibly ever imagine that from that position. That is the wonder of life. That's why, to me, the law of transformation is much more transcendent than the law of attraction. Because ultimately, we don't know where we're going, just that we are. And look, this transmutation is happening every single second. Every second, 1 million cells die and 1 million cells get reborn. Every second, bar none. Transformation is happening constantly. At my age, I'm on body number 10. No, not quite. I'm halfway through body. Yeah, I'm about halfway through body number 9. right? Complete bodies, right? This is not the same one I came with. Obviously, this would be really weird to give birth to. Wow, that would be an abandoned child for sure. Right. So I hope that answers the question. It's such a beautiful and a huge subject. And it brings me into so many different ways that I teach that. But it's the reason I call it inner reconciliation. We're actually reconciling with this energy that is trapped in its defensive posture and is never going to give it up until it knows it's safe. And most of the time, through self-help and all the things we do, as well-intentioned as it is, the intention to fix it and change it and make it different, and it's broken and now I got to make it better, is actually communicating to it the same thing that put it into the defensive posture. So what happens? It digs its heels in. And sometimes you can create an environment like in a retreat or something that that does actually create a sense of safety, and we have those peak experiences, and then we go back to our regular lives, and all of a sudden we start yelling at the kids. We don't quite understand why. We have to understand what the depth of it, so that we can go completely into it, totally. And when we do that with no agenda whatsoever, we have provided the environment that allows it to go, I can go off duty. And you can even invite it to go off duty. It won't go completely off. It'll always be monitoring. But wouldn't it be great to always feel safe when you really were safe, which is almost all the time, and only feel unsafe when there really was danger? Not imaginary, not something that might happen, not some memory from the past, but you'd only feel something. So when you felt something wasn't safe, it really wasn't. And when you felt safe, it's because you actually were. That's the power of this energy. When it is released from that posture, it becomes incredibly wise. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Gabriel. Wow, what a pleasure. What a pleasure. Okay, Alan. Oh man, 5:16. I'm going to have to draw it here. I'm going to make a quick check over here on Facebook and see if anything showed up before I take up some. I'm going to read ahead a little bit, see if I can put them all into to one place. Don't get a lot of questions on Facebook for whatever reason. I'm not quite sure why. And today was no exception. Unless, of course, sometimes Facebook doesn't, on Facebook, with Facebook Live, sometimes it actually doesn't refresh. Let's see. Wow, hopefully. Well, if the questions will stop coming, maybe I'll be able to answer them. After a weekend retreat, lots of mindfulness, became everything in the experience. Beautiful. You disappeared. That's it. You became the ocean, and burst out into tears. Well, yeah. the burden off your shoulders. I mean, I find myself crying absolutely spontaneously. Right? Because there's just such a sense of relief. Sometimes they'll break into laughter. I mean, crazy laughter, right? Sometimes people just go, oh, just because everything drains out. And sometimes you'll sit on a park bench for 2 years. Sometimes you'll do all of them. Sit on the park bench, laughing and crying at the same time. People think, well, you're out of your mind. You are out of your mind. Thank God. Yes, it's good. Absolutely, it's good. This is what happens when the energy finally releases. Right? I think I told I've told the story that early on in this, and I'm kind of leading into another question that said, what made you come to this truth for yourself and everyone? What made you clear about this? It's a very, very long story. But it has been punctuated by these deep insights where I became more and more willing to just listen to myself and less dependent on my mind. And even though I had a very spiritual, a lot of things I was into spiritually, I always found there was something really missing. It was a couple of key things that I needed. And at first, I was very much not trying to feel. I thought spirituality was to get rid of your feelings. You don't have those feelings. You transcend, you meditate beyond, so those things aren't happening and you're not programmed and all of that kind of stuff. It was nonsense, I eventually discovered. And I just remember one time My mother was very mentally ill, and it was a very difficult time. I don't remember ever feeling loved. It was always tense. I was always walking on eggshells. I was always assuming different person. I was the artful dodger. You never knew who was going to show up next, so you were never actually clear, which wreaked havoc on my nervous system because it couldn't actually sit anywhere to be safe, right? Even a bad environment is usually consistent, and if it's consistent, your nervous system will figure out a way to deal with it. But mine wasn't. I mean, it would go from extreme abuse to extreme neglect. Switching sides in the middle of a conversation, suddenly a different person was standing there. So it was just totally. And obviously it affected me my whole life, especially my relationship with women. And finally, I was much older. Late 30s, early 40s, when doing a lot of inner process and finally engaging the body in the process, which I didn't know to do before that. One time it finally just completely welled up from within me. I never had a mother, and I'm never going to. And the truth of that sunk in. Well, the illusion of, what was there and what it could have been, and, the whole idea that what's supposed to be there, and in fact was supposed to be there, but wasn't, just completely broke. And the reality of it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I wept like a baby for 5 days. I couldn't stop. I had to go out at times. I'd pull it back like a robot. I'd go through, do what I have to do. I'd go back home and I would just weep all into the night. Until exhausted, I would just fall. 5 days it went on until finally it just broke. All of the grief, the system purged itself of that. It came to reconcile with it. I didn't have the word for it at that time, but that's what it did. Everything changed after that. My demeanor changed, my humor changed, my relationship. I was actually capable of having an intimate relationship at that point, finally, which I really couldn't before. I was always playing a role and out the back door. So it's yes. When the tears come, especially when you don't have any idea where they're coming from, let them come. Let them come. This energy is the energy of the universe. It is so brilliant. It knows what it's doing. Trust it. Just let it come. What made me come to this truth? Well, the search for truth for me was not intellectual right from the get-go, although I went very intellectual with it, because as you just heard me talk about my childhood, it was just so difficult that I was just constantly suffering. The only relief I got is when I got into drugs when I was 15 years old. And I did incessantly for the next 4 years until I was totally a wreck. There was nothing left, and I didn't even want to live. Right? So, and then the divine intervened. It was an incredible. I don't have enough time to tell the whole story of it, but I was suddenly redeemed. This such tremendous insight that it changed my life almost overnight. And I'd been seeking. I really had been seeking. I'd had spiritual experiences when I was a child. But at that point, the seeking became different because now I knew what I was seeking. Before, I just wanted relief from the pain. And the first time I got stoned at 15 years old, that did it. Relief. It was the first time in my life I had actually relaxed. So it was no wonder that it became my best friend. But it set me on this path to truly understand, to really understand. And plenty of sidelines and stuff going in different directions, and a lot of false starts and a lot of mistakes and a lot of arrogance that I didn't see, and a lot of egoism that I was just blind to. Little by little of it just happened. So ultimately, what brings anybody to it is just simply grace. And by grace, I mean who you really are. Who you really, really, really are is leading you back to who you really, really are, out of the illusion of who you think you are. To quote Rumi, one of my favorite quotes from Rumi, he said, "The one who brought me here must bring me home." The energy that even reveals to you, the insight that something's wrong, something's missing from your life, where does that come from? Does it come from the conditioning? Of course not. The very fact that you feel is conditioned. You can see it. How? Where does that come from? The fact that you can feel conflicted, when you can want something and not be able to have it and see this inner conflict going on. The very fact that you can see it, where's that coming from? Where is it coming from that we know that something's off? So, no, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. How do you know that? If there wasn't something really amazing and deep within you that was conveying a wisdom to you, you wouldn't be conflicted. It'd just be the way it is. Be like an ant. They don't have psychotherapists. They don't have issues. Right? Right? We do. Why? Because something inside of us is communicating constantly to us what's true. And at first, because we don't actually know what that is, all we know is this really annoying voice that says something's not right. That annoying voice, which everybody tries to get rid of, anesthetize, make it be quiet, make it go away, transcend it, whatever. That annoying voice is the voice of truth. Pay attention to it. Running out of steam here, folks. Let's see. Wow. Wow. I can't get to the rest of these. Geez. I've got a YouTube channel. You're looking at it right now. I oftentimes I will go back and look at these, and oftentimes I'll actually use them as material for making videos and the like. I've got free courses that go on called You're Not Broken. For those of you who are more on the non-dual thing, I've got a course called The Thought of I, which breaks this whole thing down. They're available. Go to mhicourses.com. You'll see on the homepage, it's got all the courses, people who've purchased courses, but all the free ones are there too. There's a thing in the top that you can take one to learn about inner reconciliation. But somebody asks if a prostrate problem is rooted in a chakra meltdown. What I would say is it is rooted in an energetic disruption of some kind, but don't immediately let your mind jump to what it thinks it is. Instead, go into your body. What does your body need? What's it, what's it been carrying? What kind of stress, what kind of pain, what kind of traumas, what kind of grief that has never been released? Those are the questions to ask. They go way beyond the illness, because the illnesses will come and go. Some may even, take a life, but you don't get taken. The body might dissolve, but you're still there. So everything you're doing, every effort you make is benefiting you for lifetimes to come, until eventually there are no more lifetimes. Gabriel, so happy and surprised you remembered me, G. She just realized that was what I really needed here, not the answer to my question. Funny how life works. How could I forget you, Gabriel? We have so many late nights spent together. How could I? Yeah, I haven't been there. I haven't been there for a while. But anyway, I'd love to talk to you, man, and catch up. So it's amazing you survived. Simply amazing. No, yes. If I was on my own devices, I should have been dead a long, long time ago. It's just too many things, just too many stupid mistakes. But it's grace. It really is grace. I'm not kidding you. The ocean is calling the river. The river is just dum 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 dum. The all is calling it. Judy, missed you. Thanks, love. Buddha's brain. Thank you, G. Most memorable time together. Thank you all. Oh God, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's so good to be doing this. It's so good doing this without any kind of restrictions around me. So I don't have to keep monitoring myself, and I can just keep going on and on until I finally feel as if it's complete for tonight. And I think it is. Thank you all. I love you dearly. And see you next week.